And coming in as a freshman, we all knew about this project. I personally had a vague idea about what I wanted to do. I knew that there was something called the Monroe Institute that was near my house, and that it had something to do with brain research and also music. And I've always been interested in music. As a sophomore, I took AP Biology with Miss Tinder, and I really realized that I did enjoy neuroscience and that I wanted to focus on that. And it came together magnificently. As a senior, I was able to combine these interests. So my question, my burning question was, what are the effects of binaural beats on enhancing cognitive abilities and inducing relaxation? So this question is jam-packed. It's got to do with what are binaural beats, what are their components, and what are the various ways they affect your brain, and what are the effects that it can take, like, outside of your brain. And so, first of all, I'm sure you're wondering, what is a binaural beat? If you look at the word binaural, you can break it up. Aural meaning auditory or having to do with hearing, and bi meaning two. This next slide shows what I think is an excellent representation of it. Say, for instance, you're listening to 100 hertz frequency in your right ear, and you're listening to 120 hertz frequency in your left ear. This will travel through your temporal lobe into the brainstem, and like formulating in your reticular formation, you'll hear the sum. It's a perceived sound. It doesn't exist. It goes from a sound wave into an electrical transmission in your brain. Oh, excuse me. This sum right here, as you can see, has nothing to do with 100 or 120, whether it's the difference between them. So it'll be a fluctuation in amplitude, which we all know is volume, of 20 hertz. So saying this is the x-axis, it'll be fluctuating 20 hertz up, 20 hertz down. This is a wah, wah, wah kind of effect that you'll hear, but it doesn't actually exist except in your brain. This slide right here kind of breaks up the frequency, the ranges of frequency, into where they fall as far as brainwave patterns go. For instance, the last slide I showed had a difference of 20 hertz, and that would fall in the beta range. These all, like, as we sit here right now, our brains are emitting these frequencies. Probably it's early in the morning, but you're all paying attention, so I'd say it's probably alpha right now. For instance, you'll get out of something and you're all amped up, adrenaline rushing. You could listen to these binaural beats, and after about 15 or 20 minutes, a frequency following response happens. Your brain will be tricked into thinking that these waves it's hearing is what it should be emitting, and so it will actually mimic these waves that it's being exposed to. In this way, the company that I interned with embeds the beats into music, so you can be listening to music, and it'll actually help you reach whatever state of consciousness you'd like to reach. I like to use an example of that adrenaline. You want to go to sleep, but you just really can't. If you were to listen to a binaural beat track that has theta or delta waves embedded into it, after about 15 or 20 minutes, your brain will start to emit those same theta or delta waves, helping you go to sleep. I'd also like to add that it's a passive technology. In no way does it take over your brain. So if you're listening to these beats or embedded into music or not, you could be talking to people, or you could be distracted by something else, and it'll have no effect. You kind of have to use these as a tool to reach the state you'd like to reach. It really is just to help you get the results you want. This picture right here is from my expert interview, which I'll talk about later, but I wanted to include it because I think it's a great showing of an EEG scan. You can see here that these are beta and alpha waves, how tight they are in frequency, and down here are going to be more delta waves. And while this technology is kind of fading into the past now in place of MRI machines, they just put electrodes on your scalp, so it's not quite as accurate as an actual brain scan would be. I thought this was a pretty good actual representation of these waves recorded. So as far as my internship goes, I worked with Monroe Products, which is an offshoot of Monroe Institute. It's right down the road in Livingston. And this was my mentor, AJ Honeycutt. He was excellent. He helped me any way that I possibly needed. He provided me with resources and materials, any paper that I wanted to read, and he answered all of my questions, showed me their process of embedding binaural beats in the music, and also got me in touch with the person who I did my expert interview with. I went and met with Ross Dunseith at UVA's Division of Perceptual Studies, which was totally awesome. I got to go and interview him, but also got to tour the facility. So these are two pictures that I took while I was there. The one on the left is the library they have at the facility, and that was this is just one aisle, but it was really extensive. And on the right here is something that Ross actually designed himself. It's an EEG scanner that can work inside of an MRI machine. And like I said, these aren't going to be really used anymore, but about 7 years ago, he was selling them to hospitals and research facilities all over the place. I thought this provided me with a lot of insight on binaural beats, as well as showing me the picture on the computer that I just showed you about how they look when they're scanned. So this is a picture of me at Monroe Products, but I'd like to take this time to talk about my community service. I gave several presentations here at the high school to let people know about this technology and that it even exists. It's pretty obscure, and it's still emerging as far as clinical studies and research goes. The binaural beat phenomenon was actually discovered in the late 1800s, but Robert Monroe decided to expand upon that in this recent century, at the end of this century, of the 20th century. And he discovered the frequency following response, and that these binaural beats with a prolonged exposure could actually produce a brainwave state change. In addition to my community service, as far as presentations go, I got together with a sound engineer, Finn Downey, in Charlottesville, and we put together a music track, which I brought into AJ and to Kevin Cohen, who also works for Monroe Products, and we embedded binaural beats into it. And the purpose is for induced relaxation, but what I wanted to do with this is put it free download on my Governor School website. So if any of y'all or other people you know would be interested in using this, it would be a sample. It would be like a demo of how this would work. And so that's available for free download on my senior website. And I hope that would serve as a legacy as far as anybody who's interested in using it for however long you'd like to. It's a 30-minute track, and it's cut up into 4 sections. So you could listen to it straight. It's easier to download, or you can listen to section samples if you prefer. And so the significance of this project to me is that I learned that I could do what I wanted to do. I love music, and I'm so interested in neuroscience. And those seem like totally separate fields to me. But in this project, I learned that I could take my interests from totally separately seeming areas and combine them all together in research, in the industry, as far as technology goes. I was able to combine what I liked in a synthesized project. And that, to me, while I may not want to study binaural beats specifically in my future, it taught me that whatever I want to learn about, I can. And so that was the most important thing about this project to me. And it gives me hope for going into college and learning what I want to learn, and that I can learn such a vast array of things, but that they really all relate to each other in the end. This is my quote of quality, good old Bob. And this music, binaural beat technology, really can do that. They use it for preoperative operations and postoperative rehabilitation purposes too. It's been proven to reduce the amount of anesthesia you need to use. So that's one really cool thing. And as far as my future goes, I'll be attending UVA this fall as a freshman, and I'd like to study neuroscience. I'd like to study neuroscience, and I'd like to study environmental biology, and I'll always be studying music in my own way. So hopefully in my future, I'll be able to combine those 3 things, as well as anything else I'd like to do. And I really thank everybody for this opportunity for this project. Anybody have questions?
So those that go to the Conrad Institute, they will have a goal of reality. getting into that. And that's for meditative state, are these binaural beats, or what usually do they?
So I worked with Monroe Products, which is actually a manufacturing sector of it where they are strictly binaural beats. The Monroe Institute, I know vaguely about what they do. They offer various programs for various reasons. You could go in for enhanced cognition exercises, or you could go in for the more spacey kind of things. You know, you could go in for relaxation purposes as a retreat, but people travel from all over the world to go and participate in these programs. A lot of different things are offered. Discount.
Right. Announce if they have open houses for free.
Yeah, they do.
Community.
Yeah. Like I said, I didn't actually have direct contact with Monroe Institute, just Monroe Products, but they do, as far as I know, it might be every 3 months on a Saturday. They'll have open houses that you can go and listen to these binaural beats in their special, what are they called? Containment areas, basically, where you're getting like direct sound, high quality sound, and it really is able to take an effect. Because these beats, I played them for my presentations with speakers on either side of the room, and it worked really well. But to have the best effect, you'd want to listen to it in headphones, over-ear headphones preferably. And they have the sound technology in these little booths, is what I'd call them, if you go to the open houses. Yes.
I have 2 questions for you, Alice, if
you
don't mind. The first is, you described this as a passive technology, and you identified several examples of how the different waves of binaural beats could be used for different purposes. For example, for entering deep relaxation or sleep. Was there any indication that this could create a dependency on the technology? For example, if you used it repeatedly, you would be unable to achieve that state of relaxation on your own?
That's really interesting that you asked that question. Actually, it's the complete opposite. So this company, Monroe Products, makes these beats as a tool to use, and theoretically, after like prolonged use of them, if you were to use them every day for a specific purpose, it actually trains your brain to be able to achieve that state without listening to the music. And so what I like to say is, let's say you have slight ADHD, but you don't want to be put on pharmaceuticals. You could potentially listen to this technology and be able to train yourself to achieve a state of focused attention without the use of even the music or pharmaceuticals. So it's really a training tool. And that's another thing the Monroe Institute does, is these exercises are kind of for that purpose, to train your brain.
It's very interesting, and thank you for having such a detailed answer to that question. My second question is about the legacy of your work. You mentioned making this available on your website as a free download, sharing this through presentations with several classes at the high school. My question to you now is, do you see this as a tool that could be utilized specifically for your peers and for future students of the high school? Do you see this beneficial in any specific way to students here?
I do, potentially. I'm not sure about how it would go as far as parents having to sign permission slips for it, and if the students, like I said, it's passive, so if you're talking and stuff, it wouldn't really take an effect. So I think that if students were on board with it, I think it should be offered as a tool they can use. Like if you wanted to put headphones on while you're working and listen to a concentration tape. As far as my legacy goes, I would hope that people do listen to the track I made and are able to form their own judgments on the technology. And there are so many things that are available for everybody in this room to use for various purposes. I also may continue working with Monroe Products. They talked to me about this track and that they liked it and that it fit well with the technology they use, obviously. And so they asked me if this summer I would be able to make more tracks or lengthen this one a little bit and actually be able to, they'd actually manufacture it from their company. And so in that way, yeah, I could potentially make specific tracks for education. They have enhanced learning tracks and study help, study help, music to listen to. So I believe that it could absolutely be applied in an educational setting.
Excellent, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Alice, you've got a lot of future Blue Ridge seniors here. Any advice for them as they go into their projects?
Well, it'll probably sound similar to all the other advice people give. Community service is an interesting part of this. When you do your research, I researched binaural beats and how could I, what could I serve the community doing? So that was probably the most difficult part for me. The research question was packed and I could totally find all I needed and go really in depth with the question, but how could I serve the community? So when you're thinking about your project, I would highly advise that you're able to conceive of a way to connect your project and your research with the community service you do. And I know it doesn't have to be directly related, but if you can find some kind of bridge, that's probably one of the things I should have meditated on a little bit more. Are there any other questions?